Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Texas Podcast Massacre. I am your host, Tank Rodriguez. Joined with me is Dirty Derek, Timothy James Dean. We will get into their intros here in a second, but I do want to say something really quick before we go. This is episode 92. We are on the road to episode 100 of the Tank Rodriguez Show altogether, and I just can't believe it. It started off with me and Dirty Derek in October, almost a year ago in October. And, I just never thought, me personally, I've never, not that this is the relationship show, but I've never really accomplished a lot. I'm kind of like, I'm bored, next thing. But this is like the most, this is the thing that I've actually done the most in my life, that I'm really proud of it. So I'm excited to get to episode 100. It's going to be exciting. Got some good ideas, what we're going to do here, when it comes time. Hopefully we get everyone in the gang with the Tank Rodriguez Show on, and we'll see how that goes. But yes, let's, without further ado, Dirty Derek, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, man. Episode 92, huh? I mean,
episode 92.
It's hard to believe. I feel like when we get to 100, I'm gonna actually have to change my name. I'm gonna be Mr. Clean. I'm not gonna be Dirty Derek anymore. I'm Mr. Clean. I'm gonna be like diddly do,
Mr. Clean 100.
Mr. Clean 100.
100.
Talking about a GB heck of a time here on Heck'em. We're gonna clean this. We're gonna clean this up. We're only talking about PG-13 horror movies with no nips and no soapy butts.
I will quit this podcast.
I'll clean up your act, Timothy. No, I'm super excited. Yeah, we talked about some ideas the other day. Most of all, harassing our other favorite.
He doesn't listen to the show, so he doesn't listen to it. So you know what we're gonna do, Jimothy? We're just gonna clown on Tanner the whole time. Like
we'd have a combined. What we were planning on doing is having a combined show with everybody from all the podcasts to talk about like a theme or something like that. It's like interconnected, but we wouldn't plug in Tanner's mic. So we're just going to let him go on a long diatribe for the whole podcast. We're going to let him have the most speaking time ever.
It's going to be a really quiet podcast.
He's going to be recognizing that his thing, when we play it back, is not recorded at all. That's going to be great.
Yeah, it's either that or we're just going to like throw slides at him and he's not going to know why. Like everyone's just being a complete jerk to him.
Yell at him.
Whatever works.
Look, Tanner.
I'm
if
down.
That's your real name.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah, that's your alias. Is today not a good day?
Actually,
Did you have to use your AK?
No, that's that's the thing. And now that I think about it, that's not his first name.
It's not. It's Kenneth.
It's Kenneth.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and we make so many REM references to him, and he doesn't get it.
What's the frequency?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's not a fan.
But yeah, and then of course, last but not least, we got. Hey, you got a haircut too, bud. Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Get ahead.
Post.
That's what I said.
Post Corona.
Yeah, dude. Like it was time. It was like I hadn't had a haircut since my birthday, so it's been almost March, April, May, almost 5 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was looking a little shaggy, so I decided to get my ears lowered, as the old men say. Oh God.
I wish I had a button that could go wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
Well, I do have that button, but you're not here. Timothy, how you doing?
Sup!
Yeah! That's a sup. That is a sup if I've never heard one before.
It's honestly just a mask might or pain. So, but no, I'm good, man.
It's like your wubba lubba dub dub.
Exactly.
Sup.
I'm good.
They're in the hurt deep within sups.
Exactly. So no, man, I'm doing good. I'm eating healthy. I'm running. I have a new lease on life to make the most of these fucking bananas times we live in. So
absolutely.
Hey,
at my age, yeah. And Derek, by the way, you're looking svelte, man. You're looking good, brother.
Yeah, man. Those arms look pretty jacked when you went to, that humble flex when you went to go scratch your head. You're like, oh, these 22-inch pythons, brother.
That's right. It's like, oh yeah.
This is
stable
in 6 months,
humor.
this podcast is just going to turn into a weightlifting podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Should be doing
don't tell
horror
Tanner
movies
that,
while
he'll jump on
doing some benches, doing some deadlifts, some dead man lifts.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite exercise is the deadlift.
That's right. Gonna talk about Hellraiser today. Oh.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm gonna ask y'all a quick question. I'm gonna step away for 1 second. But what did y'all watch this week or these past couple of weeks?
I watched a lot. Watched some
Timothy
good, watched some bad.
You had a list, so I'll let you go first because I did not have a list, but I did watch a lot too.
Well, I made a list because I was actually watching so many, and I wanted to just make notes of the one that I actually wanted to talk about. So the first thing, first off, let me just say, my ability to burn through television series is
phenomenal,
surprising even to me.
It's an art. It's an art.
I can't even tell you all of the series I've watched. I'm currently on the HBO original The Deuce, which is fucking great, by the way.
Is that the one with James
Franco, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Emily Mead? Yeah, like set in like it's actually like even though horror movies don't play like a role in it, like they pop up here and there in some tangential reasons, but it's basically it's New York in the 70s through there's 3 seasons. I'm actually on the season finale of season 2 right now, but they take place through a few years, but it's like the height of 42nd Street in Manhattan. So pimps and prostitutes and the rise of the porn industry. But there's exploitation films get brought up, cheap horror movies get brought up in it. But it's actually just a great show. And anything period I'm a big fan of, and they do manage to capture that 70s vibe of New York really well. But anyways, I'm watching that. But let's talk about some horror movies. So the first thing I wanted to talk about that I watched, and I hadn't realized we hadn't recorded in a while, but this was a while ago, but is the TV movie Cast a Deadly Spell. That's actually currently on HBO Max. You can watch it.
So Clancy Brown in that one?
He is. So I remember the movie from when it came out. So it's basically like a film noir, but in a universe. So it's very obviously tied into the Lovecraft mythology. In fact, the main the main character who is played by I don't want to say Sam Neill. What is his name? Tremors, who wasn't Fred Ward. So Fred Ward stars as Harry P. Lovecraft. And it's basically like this weird, like, do you guys remember? I mean, I remember in the early 90s and mid 90s when all of a sudden like film noir and like fake film noir was really popular. 40s films were like, everything was trying to like be a throwback, like, and a lot of them were kind of like this amalgamations, but it's basically a neo-film noir about this universe where everybody uses magic, except for private detective Harry P. Lovecraft. And
does P stand for Peter?
I think it does, actually. I'm not even kidding.
Harry Peter.
Let me see actually if they say his full name. It doesn't say here. But anyways, it's a very weird movie. It's basically like he's trying to find the Necronomicon. It's actually her early Julianne Moore role too, so she's pretty young in this. It's a goofy movie, but it's actually really fun. And the cast is great. I mean, Clancy Brown plays the sort of mob boss that's in it. David Warner, who's always great. He plays this like rich guy who's basically trying to get his stolen Necronomicon back. He's a quote unquote book collector. But it plays really heavy into the Lovecraft mythology. There's some really fun practical effects. In fact, there's this gargoyle creature that basically is like David Warner's like heavy, like he's basically like his lackey. It's man in suit. It looks really cool. There's some really cool practical effects. In fact, the last sequence, like the third act, has this basically a very like Lovecraftian style monster. It's all practical effects, and it's really cool, man. Like it's not. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but it's definitely a fun movie. And as somebody who likes Lovecraft mythology and film noir, like it was a very interesting combination in that '90s kind of way. But I'm such a big fan of Fred Ward too. I think he's always really good, and I think he's the perfect guy to play like a gumshoe sort of character. But so I watched that. That was really fun. I watched this movie called Mary, which should have been good. So the cast is great. I mean, it's got Gary Oldman and Emily Mortimer, so two fucking really great actors. It's basically the story of a haunted boat. And I mean, the thing is, it starts off well. The script is pretty solid. The acting is really good. There's a lot of like human element to it, like human relationship drama elements into it. It's the least scary movie I've ever seen. The further the movie goes on, the less you care. It's got pretty good reviews. Like I heard it recommended from a few people, and then I finished watching. I was like, that's one of the most forgettable movies I've ever seen. And again, it's shocking because
I was like, I mean, Gary Oldman too. Like he can
do anything.
He could play anything. Creepy roles, not creepy roles.
And that's what's weird is like his role is so almost kind of one-dimensional. I don't know. It was pretty disappointing. So that was a disappointment. I watched this movie called Monster Island, which is a sci-fi original, and I felt like I should bring it up because I have talked recently about people or on this podcast I've mentioned several times about I'm a big Godzilla fan and kaiju fan and giant monster, and this movie is basically trying to basically be like a new version. I mean, it's called Monster Island, which is already fucking a ripoff anyways, but I mean, it's typical sci-fi movie bullshit, but it's also like
Eric Roberts.
Yeah, which is what you're in for when Eric Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
It's Eric Roberts is especially bad in this too. It's like he just does not. He's basically reading from cue cards. It's so bad. But like monster designs are fucking stupid and like it's I don't know. Anyways, it's a sci-fi original, but I don't know what I was expecting. But it basically like trying to basically do like a new kaiju universe, but it's fucking terrible and all the monster designs are fucking whack. Like the main monster throughout is basically like a giant starfish, which could be cool, but this one isn't. Anyways, so that was a piece of shit. I watched a movie though that actually kind of took me by surprise. That I hadn't heard of, but I saw advertised. I don't know if it was on Hulu or I think it was Hulu, not Netflix. But it's the movie Villains. I saw that in the theaters with Jeffrey Donovan. Yes, exactly. He plays it's Bill Skarsgård, so he's weird that he's not in some kind of makeup, but Kyra Sedgwick, who's a fucking great actress. I mean, the movie is so wholly unoriginal. There's so many movies that have done the same thing that it's like, well, the plot basically it's the plot of this young guy and girl. They're bank robbers or thieves. They held up like a liquor store and they're on the run. Their car breaks down inside this house. They try to get in the house to basically find a car, steal some gas or whatever. And it turns out to be they find this young girl chained up in the basement. Cut to now they're trapped in this house with this weirdo couple. I mean, you've seen this kind of thing in the past, like this. I mean, there's elements of people under the stairs.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I mean, short of not having like deformed, sun-starved, grown men under your stairs, like essentially that's really like the weird 1950s couple vibe, not incestuous as far as I know, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean the thing is, it's like the script isn't anything special, but it's anchored. I think Bill Skarsgård is actually I think he's good in it. I think he plays that like yes, he's a bad guy, but is he a bad guy? And
He's like a fuck up. I mean, that's like
Yeah,
he's not like compared to like Jeffrey Donovan's character, who is definitely a bad guy.
Yes.
You know,
And the other, they're especially
this message is
creepy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's like, I mean, he's a thief and stuff, but you know, it's one of those movies that I didn't expect to like, but I was like, oh, when it was finished, and again, Keira Sedgwick is great. Jeffrey Dahmer is always great. I feel like he doesn't get enough love. And I mean, the young actress, Mika Monroe, who played the female lead, she was really good. So I was like, I mean, again, it's not a fantastic movie, but it was a surprising movie, and I was pretty. When it was over, I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty enjoyable. And I like Bill Skarsgård, and I don't want to see him get typecast. So you know, hopefully, you know, he gets more roles where he's not in makeup of some kind. But yeah.
When I watched that movie, Bill Skarsgård in that role reminded me of a less fugly version of that guy from SNL. Who's that?
You're gonna have to be more
Pete Davidson.
Oh, dude, ladies love Pete Davidson, dude.
Dude, I do not know why. Okay, these are questions that boggle my mind. Like, he dated Cindy Crawford's daughter. I know this is not like horror
and
podcast,
Ariana Grande.
Yeah. This is like a Rick Ocasek effect. Like, this is where I'm going with. Like, Rick Ocasek from the Cars, the ugliest motherfucker you've ever seen in your life. Married Paulina Porskova.
Okay, real quick.
Like, the guy's Mick Mars.
Well, no, yeah, Mick Mars wasn't. He's a weird looking dude, but
he likes a fucking Fu Manchu, like.
But when he was younger, he was. I mean, he's still not like Nikki Sixx is like that dude could be like, you know, a model outside of like, you know, the band. Like, he was a good looking dude, but
yeah,
Mick Mars is a weird looking dude, but he was in a cool band. But
that's what I'm just saying.
Let's not hold on, because I want to get back to Rick Ocasek real quick. First off, there is no more. I mean, the dude was a human ostrich. Like, he was the most fucking bizarre looking person I've ever seen, and I've seen him in person. I was walking around North Hollywood, and we saw him coming out of a bookstore, and me and my friends actually followed him. And he's even weird. He's 75% neck. He passed away, so I feel bad. We shouldn't. We're talking.
R.I.P. I love the Cars.
Yeah, so, and he was a great. Yeah, and again, he's Rick Ocasek. But yeah, dude, he was 75% neck, 35% Adam's apple, 100% ears. Like, he's the weirdest fucking looking, with a weird page boy haircut. Like, he was a weird dude. But he was married to one of the most beautiful women ever. So
that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, so the fact that people love Pete Davidson, like, I'm not surprised by it because of that.
I mean, I definitely think Pete Davidson's better looking than Rick Ocasek, but but girls love him. He's got that like bedroom eyes. He's got like that lanky kind of like stoner guy thing. I get it.
He got high eyes.
Yeah,
got super high eyes. He's chill all the time. I don't know, man. But anyways, that's
he's pretty fucking funny. The Weekend Update ones. I mean, I've scored chicks on the basis of being hilarious.
I would definitely watch him in the King of Staten Island, the new Judd Apatow movie. It looks great. Like,
based off of his life.
Yeah, I like him. I just it's just that kind of like you're fugly. Like, so you got to be really funny because like. Or hung on one of the two, but like,
yeah. Well, I mean, Ariana Grande said he
a Leto effect. That's exactly what it is.
Ariana Grande said he was the biggest she'd been with, and then he came out and said that's not true, which is a weird. He said he actually said he has a theory that she said that after they broke up, and he's like, I think she only said that to ruin my life because then every girl I sleep with is going to be disappointed. I was like, he's like, okay, possibly.
Maybe he was just saying that's not true because maybe she was the biggest he's ever been with. Potentially. I don't want to say that the shoe falls on one foot or the other, you know. But I digress. But I totally agree though. Great movie. I love Villains. I thought it was really well done, and I really like the acting and like the dialogue. Compared to like for the grand scheme of things, right? Like, it really is kind of a one setting situation. Takes most of the place in the house. You know, and there's really only at the end, like, really two victims in the grand scheme of things. So,
plus, let me just one more say, like, Keira Sedgwick is such a fucking great actress.
Yeah,
like,
she is.
And you know, especially her performance at the very end was like, oh, this Yeah, it's again surprising little movie.
Yeah, I like her. She's good. She's married to Kevin Bacon, so I figured like that's
Are they still married? I thought they broke up finally.
No, still married.
Oh, good.
Still married.
Talk about somebody. Okay, sorry, we're gonna derail this real quick. I love Kevin Bacon, but to me is one of the weirdest, especially in the '80s. Like the two people that were sex symbols in the '80s, like for like teen girls, that I'll never understand were Ralph Macchio and Kevin Bacon because they weren't good looking dudes.
I understand the Kevin Bacon thing because that I mean, even today, I mean, granted he's older, right? But I mean, he's always just looked weird. Like even
he's a weird looking dude.
Well,
I mean, like I love him. I grew up with Footloose.
He's lanky. He's lanky. But, I don't think he's that weird. Like
but young Ralph Macchio looks like a Julian Casablanca of the Strokes, my friend. And
no, I mean maybe the lips, but no. He's a weird looking. He was never cute, like especially when you have guys like this is a weird this is a conversation.
Sorry, the two Utes, but I guess.
Well, welcome back to the relationship show.
No, but guess what? To bring it kind of full circle, Ralph Macchio is actually in the TV show The Deuce. He plays a corrupt cop. Anyways, Derek, what else did you see this?
Well, funny enough, I literally just finished up before this podcast. I just watched Stir of Echoes.
Awesome.
So ironically enough, with Kevin Bacon, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I forget how weird that is. But yeah, he's in that movie, like he's lanky, but he's like got those eyes, right? Like, he's like just wild. I gotta dig.
Yeah.
I gotta, that was like my favorite part. Like when he gets all manic and stuff.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Kevin Bacon. He's like, do the thing. So, but in the spirit of I watched a ton this week. So in the spirit of kind of our conversation tonight, which is like direct to video, I watched a lot of things that were not mainstream. So I started off by watching. I mentioned in our previous kind of messaging that I discovered Tubi. So I was a recommendation in a horror forum that I'm in that says, hey, like Tubi's got some really great movies. And I was like pretty pleasantly surprised at the amount of like free horror movies that are out there. So any of our listeners who always say like, I don't have anything to watch, like go check out Tubi, man. They have some good movies on there, and they have some not so good movies on there. But I didn't care because I just started watching everything. So I started off. I watched The Taking of Deborah Logan.
A movie I'm actually a big fan of.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done for a found footage, kind of not found footage film, but a footage film. I thought it was great. So creepy, like especially the very end. I totally forgot about that scene with the disarticulated jaw and the stake head, and definitely leaves you hanging at the end because like you're like, is that girl like gonna be the next like Deborah Logan? Probably. She's gonna become a snake girl and bite people's heads off. Maybe. And then I finished up. I watched Itsy Bitsy, which was a spider movie. Very interesting kind of concept about a kind of a smuggled a mom who kind of, I don't want to say she's like on the run, but she's like has a serious drug problem. Like she says she's a pill popper, and goes out to this like a remote like location, small town to like take care of this elderly guy with her two kids. She was in an accident, so you get the impression like killed her youngest son. She got fired, kind of clean start. So she's still pretty much like hooked on pills. The brother takes care of the younger sibling most of the time. So like that level of like parental neglect that you see in movies that you're like, that poor kid. But it centers around this artifact that they kind of smuggle from this tribe, and his like adoptive son kind of breaks the artifact, tries to take it away from the elderly guy that she's caring for. Breaks open, and in there is a giant like monstrous spider, and so it kind of bites the guy and then runs off and like hides in the attic. And the little girl keeps saying she's spiders. Nobody believes her because they're like, tiny spiders. But there's this big monstrous fucking spider that nobody believes, and the mom's like too drugged out to figure it out. So it's kind of a very interesting, like dramatic, yet like very suspenseful, like what's gonna happen here type scenario. So I thought that was pretty good. Not great, but if you're in the realm of watching a not so bad spider movie.
So because I'm glad you brought this up because I'd forgotten about. I saw that when I saw the trailer. And the trailer is one of those where it's almost like just one like the whole trailer is sort of just one scene.
Yeah.
Where she's like, it's like she's seeing it under her bed or whatever. But I was like, that's interesting because it's not like a giant spider. It's just an exceptionally large, like the size of maybe like a dog, maybe.
Yeah, I would say like a dog, or like a lampshade or something like that. Yeah, not like a monstrous like. I thought that was a weird choice, but interesting. But well, I mean, it was kind of cool though because like it hid very easily. Like you could hide in things that comes down the chimney. So it's like one of those giant like tarantula spiders you actually read about that are like 2 feet long. So I thought it was kind of cool. Like I mean, I probably wouldn't live in a base like and be broken in case of emergency type situations, but not a bad film if you're trying to do other things and trying to watch. Then I watched The Hoarder, which was this weird movie. Had the guy from and I always forget. He always plays a weird guy. He played the child molester in a Prison Break TV show.
I never saw that. Yeah.
You probably know him in a few other things as well. He's kind of a weird looking dude. He always like kind of plays a skeezy criminal. But anyways, this woman, Misha Barton, who is kind of trying to snoop on her boyfriend, thinks he's cheating. She has apparently a track record for doing that. She goes to his storage unit to try to dig through some of his like stuff to figure out if he's cheating or not. And while she's there, she goes to the wrong level. She goes to like the 4th floor. Her friend gets kidnapped by something strange. He's got like a shaved head and his lips are like stapled together. And you don't really kind of know what it is. And it's like maybe somebody living in the storage unit or like a weird kind of castle freak type situation. But it's like her and a few other people that are trapped there trying to make their way through, and they're kind of getting picked off one by one. But it's a weird, it's a very weird ending, like has like a kind of a human centipede kind of ending. Where you're like, wow, I didn't actually expect that particular person to be involved in this. Let's say there's a very, very dumb front desk guy that's kind of really creepy, weird. And of course, he's like the ringleader behind it all. And so, spoiler alert, he's kidnapping people and keeping them trapped in the storage units and like stapling their lips together. He busts out their front teeth so he can put a feeding tube in to feed them like rats in a cage. He's got a little rat in his cage. So he treats humans like that. And he just comments on like nobody ever comes to claim anything in storage units. So people just figure they roll on by and keep going. And like sure enough, the girl's Misha Barton's boyfriend at the end comes to look for her, and then he's like, you know what, fuck it, she left. Like, take my storage unit, sell everything inside. I don't care. So it was like it was pretty interesting though. But the creme de la creme was I started to watch the Hellraiser series in its entirety.
Oh, okay. By the way, the actor is Robert Knepper, by the way.
Yes, Robert Knepper, yes. He always kind of plays these, he has a lot of like kind of side roles, but usually slimy roles. Yeah. In most of his roles. But yeah, notorious for a guy named Teddy in the Prison Break show who was a rapist and a child molester.
Teddy Bagwell.
Just an overall bad dude. Yeah, Bagwell. But anyways, yeah, I started watching, so I got up to Hellraiser 3 so far. So I got
which is really honestly, just stop there, Derek. Just don't do it to yourself.
I'm committed. I didn't realize how many fucking Hellraiser movies there actually were out there. I mean, I thought there was maybe like 6. There's like 10 of them out there. It's like Hellraiser Bloodline, Hellraiser
Revelations.
Inferno, Revelations, Judgment, Deader. There's like a virtual one, like it's a one in space. One. Yeah. So I was like, well, we're in the conversation tonight about home video releases, and obviously some good, some bad. Hopefully we'll talk about the good ones tonight. But yeah, it kind of prompted me. I'm like, I want to see this all the way through to the end and see how bad it gets before they reboot it and or make a TV show out of it. And hopefully they're smart enough to get Doug Bradley back because he is the best. And I would say so far, in my opinion, from what I see, Hellraiser 2 is my favorite one. But that's subjective.
Yeah, I mean, Hellraiser 2 is the best of the franchise. It's the Godfather Part 2. Hellraiser 1 is great, but it has problems like it. But I actually really like Hell on Earth. Like people shit all over that movie, but it actually was the one movie in the trilogy, in the first 3, that actually kind of upset me as a kid. it's anytime like the monster comes into a more reality-based situation.
Mm-hmm.
When you see Cenobites walking down like a main street, like that's scary. Like to me, like it brings it more home. And even though some of the designs went really over the top and stupid with the one that shoots CDs and the one with the camera, like some of them are dumb, but in a way that's still kind of upsetting. So, but you're braver, man. I've seen, I would say 75% of the Hellraiser movies, and I regret 50% of them. So
that is good. I do recognize that probably after 3, it will become a total shit show.
Yeah.
I will say that I'm not actively like intently watching them, but it's like playing in the background while I work. But it's one of those things of like, I'll catch as many for free as I humanly can, without having to pay for them. Which, good thing, most of them are shit, so they are all mostly for free, online or on streaming services, which are great. But it kind of prompted me to think like, there are a lot of really decent films or surprise films that don't come out in the mainstream theater. I think it's more relevant now than it ever was. Like, I think we're in an age now where like the 80s were like very early on with the invention of like the VHS tape. Like, except now we have things in a digital format, but they don't release in the traditional mainstream theater. So it's like we kind of like we've upgraded, but we've kind of gone back to that environment where people can make and distribute much easier by doing it digitally, just like they could, online. But I didn't know if you had any favorite direct-to-videos that you were surprised by.
Well, so when we talked about this, obviously direct-to-video is just as popular as ever. I mean, with avenues like Redbox and digital distributions, the quote-unquote straight-to-video format, or the straight-to-video business model is as popular as ever. Obviously, as soon as anybody says direct-to-video, I think of the heyday, the 80s era. I brought this up, I think, on one of the very first podcasts that we filmed. That's why I love 80s horror so much, and just the 80s films in general, was because with the advent of the home video system, it gave a lot of filmmakers a chance that would never have a chance. You got to see a lot of cool, interesting, low-budget films that you would never have seen before it, or had never seen before. The home movie system was going to come out at some point, but I will say one of the things I don't like to do a lot of research. I like to sort of have it be spontaneous, but I was like kind of doing a little bit of homework. I was actually surprised at the movies I thought, I was pretty certain never had an actual theatrical distribution that did. Movies like 976 Evil and a bunch of movies I was like,
that had theatrical release.
It did, yeah. Isn't that weird? Right. Or it doesn't qualify, or isn't listed as an actual. And again, I think like if it had like 2 screens in New York played it, it had a theatrical release. You know what I'm saying? Like, but so the list of legitimate, quote unquote, straight to video films of the 80s isn't as wide as I'd assumed. But there's still like movies on there, from really obscure shit that even a lot of horror fans don't know. Things like Tales from the Quad Dead Zone, one of my personal favorite movies of all time, which I've brought up in this podcast at least a few times, David A. Pryor's Sledgehammer, which is one of the first films ever shot on video. But yeah, there's a lot of sequels. Like 976 Evil 2 is a straight-to-video film. But, I mean, just that whole era, I mean, the thing is, like, if you think about the number of... You have, like, a lot of, like, films like Fright Night. Great movie, had theatrical distribution. Then you have Fright Night Part 2, which isn't as well known, isn't as well loved, but weirdly also still had theatrical distribution, which again kind of caught me a little bit off guard. But obviously that, to me, that's still the heyday of the direct-to-video market, and not just. I mean, honestly, in the 80s, for me, it wasn't just horror; it was also action films. It was, I mean, literally anything, like weirdo art films and art house stuff. But yeah, I mean that's when anytime anybody says direct to video to me, I think I take it very literal in my brain, and I think actual video, direct to video, VHS. But there's tons of movies past the 80s that and obviously, and that also still counts things like the 90s. I keep having to remind myself this is a horror podcast and not Going Commando, because I think about Blood Moon and all these weird weirdo low budget martial arts movies or action films, but there's a ton. But obviously I think I'll finish my first thought and then move it on to you, Derek. But obviously if I think of the direct-to-video market, I have to think of two things. I have to think of film distribution like Wizard Entertainment and all those Vestron and all those companies that released direct-to-home video movies. And in that, I have to think of Full Moon. So Full Moon Films, those all were pretty much direct-to-videos only. And as a kid, I saw that fucking Full Moon logo on something. I wanted to see it because I knew it, even if it was dumb, it was going to be dumb fun that would suit me. And that's why I like films like the Puppet Master series, the Subspecies. Like there's all of those classics we've talked about on this already. So as soon somebody says direct, straight to video, I'm thinking obviously like Full Moon, and then obviously Trauma Films, however. But I think of those film houses that were specifically everything they did was straight to video. So that's one of my biggest memories of the 80s was those companies that basically just churned out all these low budget horror and exploitation films, and how much I loved them as a kid. So.
Yeah, I think you make a really valid point, because I think a lot of times when people think like direct-to-video or digital release or whatever, I think the thought is in their mind that something has not had a theatrical release. But sometimes that's very hard to gauge, right? Because sometimes you'll have a premiere or it'll screen for I remember when House of a Thousand Corpses came out as an example. That was a movie that screened super limited. It wasn't screened everywhere. It was a handful of theaters nationally. Before it expanded out, or 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later wasn't super popular either. I know, when I was growing up, trying to find that was not exactly the easiest thing in the town that I lived in at the time. Yeah. So, but then you also have your Full Moon. I always think when I think direct video, I was thinking Trauma. That's always my Toxic Avenger and Searching a Boogeyman and Romeo and Juliet. And Attack of the Killer Condom and Class of Nukem High and all those those are all ones that I just like Full Moon. Anytime I saw that, I knew it was going to be trash, but it was going to be really good trash. And I really wanted to watch it because I knew it was going to have something in there. If anything, it was going to have some titties, and I knew that I was going to see some titties, and that was all that I needed to at that young age to want to see. And if it had some blood and guts in there too, awesome. Primarily the
criteria for direct-to-video movies: horror, check; boobs, check. Good to go.
That's right. I mean, what is it? Roger Corman's his 3 Bs of as blood, boobs, and butts.
There we go.
So I mean, he's got the 3 Bs in his films, so those were always good too.
I mean, the thing is, it's funny because I grew up obviously we've talked on this podcast, even my personal experience with the first time I saw Toxic Avenger, I'm literally sitting in front of Toxic Avenger toys and comics on my wall. But it's weird. To me, Trauma made art weirdo, low budget. Citizen Toxie. What is that move? You can't tell me that's any specific genre. Sergeant Kabuki Man is a super racist superhero comedy. I don't even know. So. Where for me, Full Moon made legitimate, actual horror movies. But it's funny because, again, weirdly, so if anybody just says the word trauma, I'm immediately 12 years old. I'm in front of my VCR, eating a bowl of cereal, watching Class of Nukem High, which again was, to me, it was always Toxic Avenger, and then immediately after that was Castle Nukem High is like the essential of the trauma films. But then Fatty Goes Berserk, and there's so many stupid. Mother's Day, which is technically a trauma movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm, yeah, they were they released it. But so the thing is, we live in a time when I wonder if it's rose-colored glasses, because I look at a movie like we'll say like the movie Sledgehammer, obviously, is not a great film. I love it. Or like we'll say Psycho's in Love. That's a perfect example. It's a notorious but not super well known direct-to-video horror film. I love it. It's super weird and cheesy. It's goofy, but I love it. But now the equivalent today is, like there's like 1,000 different zombie movies, these like really like bad low budget horror slashers that are so watered down it's like they're just copies of copies of copies. And like those I deride and look down on, but are they really that different? Like, is it because it was the 80s and it's nostalgia that makes me love a movie like Psycho's in Love, but not like, say, I'm trying to think of a good or an example of what's a modern slasher,
Well, I mean, you could take like something like the remake of
Rest Stop or what's that?
Well, yeah, Rest Stop. I mean, you have like you can do remakes. You have remakes of The Hitcher. You could have or you could take The Strangers. Like I would consider that like a modern
See, but no, that I would say it's definitely slasher inspired, but that's like an art, that's actually a well-made movie. Are you
talking about shitty slasher, like B movie?
Yeah, like low, but like shitty, like in the same way Psycho's in Love is just.
Well, I can't you could take like Candy Corn, for example. We talked about that about a week ago. I mean, that is, kind of, you have your Michael Myers-esque character in the Candy Corn dude, and he kills people in the very prototypical slasher way. I mean, that to me is one that would I don't know. I'm surprised that actually was not back in the 80s. It would be a direct to video. Another thing I watched this week, by the way, which is also on Tubi, is a show. It's a Canadian show called Punk Fu Zombie, which is also something that you would expect to see Trauma or Fullman put out with Canadian punks in the future fighting off a zombie apocalypse. So very, very interesting. But yeah, movies like that. I mean, you look at movies nowadays and look at Netflix, look at Vudu, look at any streaming service. You have your main staples at the very front. The further you scroll down, the deeper you go. You're half those movies look like they were shot on a home video.
Yeah. Well, but see, that kind of is where I start to wonder, right now, a movie like Motel Hell is considered a classic. It's for horror fans, it's silly and campy, but we love it. We put on T-shirts. It's a cool thing to love. But for kids that are 8 or 9 years old, are they gonna do this same thing? Have this reverence for these goofy, low budget films they see on Netflix and stuff when they're our age? Are they gonna look up to whatever the equivalent would be?
I don't think so. I don't think they can, because there's way too much variety and access to be able to watch that stuff, that I don't know if anything like that would to me, I don't think anything like that would resonate. When my kids watch, when my son watches and has watch parties, they're watching Reanimator, they're watching this stuff, they're watching movies like that. They're not pulling from modern.
But see, I totally understand what you're saying, and I definitely feel like your son specifically is at that age where they're specifically looking up the cool ones, the ones that have some sort of cash, that have some sort of reputation for being worthwhile, good horror films. But there's got to be kids who are just sitting at home, turning on Netflix and being and the thing is, I'm saying that, but I know there are. I've talked to them online. I see them on social media. I see these young guys, these 16, 17.
Quit talking to kids online.
Well, I'm trying to troll for young bait.
He's not serious, by the way. He's not serious.
No, I'm not.
No, we're not going to mention Twitter. We're not going to mention Twitter.
The chat transcript said.
So real quick, I have to make this. I was having this conversation with. No, shut up. So, things you don't think about. I had a teacher in high school. I will not say his name. He was an older black man. He was an older black man, very heavy. He had to work with a cane, but he was my geography teacher in high school. First off, he would say things like he called legs walking sticks, and he would tell girls they had nice walking sticks. He would literally, like, if he'd ask a pretty girl, like, how you doing today? And she'd say, fine. He'd be like, I know you're fine. I asked her how you're doing. Stuff like that. But he used to literally come into class and go, look at all this young bait. And I'd be like, what? How is that
okay? That's when teachers had tenure. I'm just saying.
I know, exactly.
Right.
But, this was, ladies and gentlemen, this was a long time ago, as I am an old man, but at the time it flew, but like I was like, dude, that would not be kosher today. Anyways, but what I was saying was, obviously there's going to be kids that just turn on. They like it because they can relate to it. It's modern, and maybe they like because I remember being a young man and hating the 70s. Now the 70s is my favorite. I can watch any movie set in the 70s, even movies that weren't filmed in the 70s, but look like this. I love it. By the time because I wanted stuff that was current. I wanted mid-'80s. I didn't want to see like grimy, grainy films.
Giallo films.
Exactly. I wanted to see like
Giallo.
But so I wonder. But I will say, I think the difference is, and I've said this before, I think what made the 80s and that first wave of those films so interesting and fun and important was that they weren't trying to copy anything. Like if you look at a movie like we'll say, for example, we'll just keep with what I was saying. We'll say Motel Hell. Obviously, like they like took inspiration from things that like Ed Gein and stuff, but they like it's so. Or a movie like Tourist Trap is an even better example. Like they're not that's just a weird ass movie. The director had an idea. They said, "What would be scary? How about this?" And usually it was a producer just trying to sell a movie poster, and like they would come up with directors but they were trying to do something new and fun, and that's the one thing the 80s films had, and especially the low-budget directed film, is that they were just fun. They had a weird sense of humor. They didn't take themselves too seriously. You had lines like bodacious booby sis, like all these weird-ass, like, bizarre creative choices, Neon Maniacs. But nowadays, you're getting all these guys that are they're self-referential. They're trying to be like, oh, I'm a huge fan of Halloween, so I want to make the new Halloween. It's like, no, just have an original vision. We talk about like remakes and sequels and all the shit, but a movie like The Hills Run Red, that's a fucking remake. It's just remaking a million movies. It's remaking The Hills Have Eyes. It's remaking Texas Chainsaw. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just copying a formula.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the problem, right? Is because then you watch a movie like Christine, which is a classic, but then you go to Netflix and there's a movie called The Car.
Well, The Car did come out in 1976, though.
Did it really? Oh shit, yep. It did. Well,
yeah, it's a great movie too. But I know what you're saying. Like, you're gonna see those cash-ins of like.
Well, there is, and then there's also The Car: Road to Revenge in 2019.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have things like you have Day of the Dead, and then you have like Day of the Dead Bloodline. With,
exactly.
Jonathan Skeech, So I mean, you have all these movies, but then you have their direct like Walmart brand ripoff as you go through, and that's what you're gonna, as you troll through like Netflix, that's what you're gonna find. And occasionally you'll have gems, right? You'll have like Henry Rollins in He Never Died. I thought it was great. Love Henry Rollins. Or you'll have like The Babysitter. We talked about Babysitter, fun, dumb, but also not terrible. So I mean, there are movies that you're going to find that are going to be on there that are going to be great. I mean, hopefully somebody comes across Event Horizon, before they come up with like Truth or Dare, But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're gonna find the dumb shit.
And can we also just say real quick that because you mentioned we didn't talk about the beginning, I wanted to super excited that Event Horizon is getting a Scream Factory release, a special edition. rumors that they're trying to somehow. I still don't fully understand like how they want to like either refilm or recreate or because it's as far as I know the footage was lost. It was stored in some salt mine or whatever of that sequence, and that the film is lost. I don't know.
Well,
they want to.
So here's what I read in an article about that. There's rumor to be a 20-minute of VHS footage that exists that is not damaged.
Okay.
So that's what Wes Anderson had said, or was it whatever the guy's name is, did Event Horizon. But anyways, he had said that there was 20 minutes of like footage that was not damaged, and like alluded to the fact. I think it's where people are getting that from, is alluding to the fact that eventually it could be on a director's cut or extended book or things like that. So
okay.
maybe that's in there, which would be amazing. But
either way, I'm just glad. Yeah, because just glad it's getting some sort of special edition release.
Right. So you have a movie like that, which is awesome. But like, it's like if you took that and made like 20 like generic ripoffs, and then they're all in a queue together because you like Event Horizon, therefore you'll like any of the following. That's where the trap is. You're not going through a video store and like kind of checking out, like reading the box cover or like getting a feel for it. You get like a 2-sentence synopsis that tells you that you're gonna like it because you liked X. Like you don't get a chance to judge that on your own. So I feel like that's where people will end up watching like half movies or quarter movies, or I don't want to watch this because it sucked, and that says Event Horizon's just like that, so I'm not going to watch it. So I think that is a downside almost of recommendations from like systems to tell you that you're going to like something that you, and I think it just may mean you will miss out. I think that's the benefit of like when you talk about direct to video, is like those are movies that like just didn't have the budget for theatrical release, but I mean they were so great movies. Whereas these movies, like they know they're going to go to, they could probably theatrical release, but they know it's going to flop. So it's going to go to a Netflix.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like if you think about the a lot of films just in the 80s they weren't getting distribution, and people knew, like a lot of them were basically like, that's why I said before, there were whole companies that saw a need for new films. Like that's why Lily Film exists, and why he started Wizard Distribution and was like, hey man, I can make a lot of money just making very cheap movies and getting them quickly into video stores because they want them. So it wasn't even an art at that point. It was literally just he saw a need in the market. It was capitalism. He was like, hey, there's all these mom and pop shops. Nobody's making movies fast enough. Let me start like making movies cheap. And it was and then other companies started doing it. And then buying up European horror and doing very terrible fucking translations to it. And, but the thing is, again, at the time, there were still people legitimate. I mean, I know this is highfalutin and maybe I'm also projecting, but they were like legitimate filmmakers. Like they were trying to like, even if they were like hired on, the Roger Corman is a perfect example of this, an AIP. Roger Corman was just trying to make movies on the cheap. He just happened to find unbelievably talented people to fucking make his movies for him. And so they would they'd get these small budgets and try to make the best movie they can. And then they would, on the weekends, make their own amazing movies. But you still have that sense of like the auteur and the directors and filmmakers trying. If you think about people like Fred Decker and all these people, like, they were making low budget movies, but they were legitimate good filmmakers. They just didn't have great budgets or, the best cast or whatever. But today it's literally just no talent hacks, just like, and then I've said this before, and I'll say it to the day I die. Sometimes fans are the fucking wrong people to do something, because somebody like, I love fucking horror movies. I love horror movies. I love Texas Chainsaw. Well, that's great, but do you have anything original to say, or are you just replaying all those movies in your head? You want to basically remake them, because nobody needs that shit. Have your own voice, say something original. And a lot of these guys are just like fucking dudes with like, who've seen Ghost Hunters too many times and think just because they have a subscription to fucking Horror Hound magazine that they can make a movie. No, man, you still no talent hack. Like, do something original, do something unique. Yeah. And a lot of these are just
nobody needs the 25th installment of Paranormal Activity, when you can have like, and granted, to your point, like full moon pictures, like were they the top quality? No, but at least they're original. I mean,
Yep.
whoever would have put together a movie about literally supernatural shrunken heads
Yep.
that fly around and revenge their death, but also like make out with the girl of their dreams by going up their shirt, and then but they're also shrunken heads. I mean, like you would never find that these days, but yet at least it was original, right?
Yeah, and
Well,
the
I'd
things
rather
people
watch
forget.
that than 10 other remakes that potentially could come out.
People forget because they eventually turned into the studio that did like Ginger Dead Man and stuff, but and the Bong one. But the first Puppet Master movie is a good movie. Like it's actually like the acting is solid. The script is pretty smart. It's nice. I mean, like I said, they filmed in Europe because it was cheaper, but also made it seem more grand and continental. The subspecies, the first subspecies movies was a good. I mean, they blockbusters. Were they fucking like on the same level as like a really expensive Hollywood film? No, but they were still good movies.
Yeah,
but then you cut to Castle Freak, a perfect example.
But I think when it comes down to it too, like, I mean, you're talking about the originality. Even if the movie sucks, it was still something original. I think you mentioned it one time. You can correct me, but it was either like a Critters movie where they go to college.
Ghoulies. It was Ghoulies. Ghoulies 3.
Ghoulies 4.
Ghoulies go to college, right? And so it's funny, like you have a movie like Ghoulies, and then like I read, like in the 20 million horror articles that I read a day, like Ghoulies is going to get a remake. Like Ghoulies can never, to me, get a remake and do it in the way that Ghoulies was originally, because Ghoulies was just so original. Yeah. These were, kind of like a little bit of a more demonic gremlin ripoff. But I mean, they were great. The Changeling, that's another one that's getting a remake.
That one makes more sense to me. Like that I can see, because there was one that's kind of atmospheric and it's like an intelligent movie. Ghoulies is like, it's so dumb it's fun.
Right.
So unless you can, at first of it's the second somebody says, so we're gonna do these CGI, nope, forget it. Like it's not like
And I think that's where the originality comes from too, because you were so limited on what the technology was back in the day. It's like, well, how do we make this cool and interesting and fun? And that's what you got. And now it's just like, well, we have this budget and we have a guy that can make it look like a ghoulie, without having to build like a what is called, animatronic, or a claymation or whatever.
I will say this. This is the perfect example of why I was, there's a new Critters movie. It was boring. People got super stoked about that new. I kept hearing how great the new Puppet Master was, like the sort of comedy one. It was dumb. Like, and I'm like,
with Thomas Lennon.
Yeah, which is weird. Like he's still sort of slumming in that, but I mean the movie's so like up its own ass. It was like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't want that. I don't want a wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I'm a puppet.
Yeah, exactly. Like, isn't this dumb? Like, no, I want you to make a good movie. Like, it's like I don't need some hipster version of that movie. Like, hey, let's all laugh how dumb this is. Like, that's not cool. Like, everybody laughed about Snakes on a Plane because the fucking title, but the movie took itself relatively seriously. It had a dumb exploitation title, which is actually the best thing about it. But like, if you watch the movie, it's like it's still sort of trying to take itself seriously. Yeah. That's why as fans, like if I love I've said this a million times, I know, but I fucking hate liking something ironically is obnoxious to me, and I also just don't even understand it. I like something, I like things that are dumb, and I know they're dumb, but I don't like it because, like, again, I'll bring it back to the movie Sledgehammer. Yes, it's a terrible movie. It is. It's inarguably a terrible movie. Everything about it is bad. But that's not why I like it. I like it because it's genuinely an interesting movie. Like, despite the limitations, despite that really amateur acting and the sort of really obvious low quality aspects of it, I there's a charm to it I can appreciate. I can see what the director was trying to do. Some of it I can't see what he's trying to do, but that's what makes it kind of enjoyable. Like I can't fathom why that decision was made, but it's at least interesting. But I'm not like laughing at the movie. I think that's specifically. I'm not laughing at the movie. I'm still laughing with the movie. It might not be like the director's necessarily the same intention, but it's not like if a movie's so bad that you have to laugh at it, to me that's not that enjoyable. Like, but that's a whole separate argument. But
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There's a line between like
very fine, yeah,
mocking a film like and laughing at it because like it exists, or just saying like there's elements like maybe it's so ridiculous it's funny, but like I'm laughing, or like there's great elements that make me laugh. I saw this the other day. Like one of the movies I didn't mention I watched like was Vamp, and I love Vamp from the 80s. Vamp.
What movie?
Oh, I was just talking about Vamp today.
Yeah, with Grace Jones. It was also on Tubi, and I haven't seen it in forever. And I was like, you know what? It's got Ken Watanabe, Long Duck Dong. It's got great Grace Jones, Nubian goddess.
What's the name from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2? Yeah.
So great actors. Now you watched the movie, right? And you understand like this came out primarily close to like Fright Night, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's kind of got a little bit of a Fright Night vibe, but it's original enough that it holds your interest. It's funny enough that you laugh with it, right? I mean, you have Billy Draco as the albino street gang. Is he was Snowflake, right? I mean, Come on. I mean, just the whole like I love seeing the diner with the girls. His gang members like seductively and the Twizzler, and then like the guy's winking at her, and then she smiles. She's only got 3 teeth, and he's like spits on his coffee, and I mean, it's funny. I'm not laughing at it because it's like cheesy. It's just got that comedic horror element to it, and it's worth it, I mean, and then Club owner keeps talking about going to Vegas, and he was trying to convince Grace Jones to go to Vegas, which I found was even more ironic because that's where the remake of the Fright Night movie takes place is in Vegas, which I was like, oh, you hit the nail on the head. But movies like that are like an interpretation of something that already exists, but like original enough to stand on its own are great. But to your point, like I think a lot of times as fans, we actually put the wrong signal out there to filmmakers to say like, I really like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's such a great movie. That's awesome. Like, I love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It doesn't mean we got to remake it 20 goddamn times for me to like it more. I'm still going to like the original better. It's like Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like, do we need to... We do,
even beyond that, like, people... Oh, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, too. I love it, too. Why do you like it? Do you like it because you think the big scary man with the chainsaw is cool? Or do you like it because it's one of the most tense... realistic horror movies ever made? It's filmed like a documentary. It's one of the most unsettling shot films of all time. The sound design, like, it's a fucking good movie. That's why you like it. But if you only thing you're taking from it is the superficial, stupid aspects of it, then you're not going to make a good movie because you're not appreciating why it's actually a good movie. I recently rewatched The Disaster Artist, and that's a great movie. And I think it's a movie I could watch maybe once every like year or so and enjoy, but I have no interest in rewatching The Room. The Room is a movie that was bad. It's a bad movie, and yes, it is so bad that it's laughable and you can laugh at it, but that doesn't hold my interest. Like, It's not like if it's still just a bad movie, I'm like, it's as bad as any low budget, big budget. It just sucks. If it's still a boring bad movie, it's a bad movie.
Or like Leprechaun in the Hood, which is you can laugh at it, but it's actually decent.
Fun. Yeah,
it's
like
fun,
you can get into it. Like the thing that people do not understand about somebody like, say, Ed Wood. Ed Wood was, a bad filmmaker to the point that like it's pretty laughable. But the dude had so much heart and he was trying to make a great movie, and some of that still translates. Like, they're still interesting movies. He filled them with interesting characters. He filled them with interesting people. You could see he had a voice. Maybe he didn't articulate it in a way that like a more sophisticated filmmaker could, but the heart of it, there's still an enjoyable aspect to it. But that's not very common. So that's why somebody like Ed Wood sort of stands out. But and that's why I think David A. Pryor is the Ed Wood of the 80s. If you've never seen Deadly Prey, do yourself a favor. But it's like that thing where everything is so homogenous. You go to Redbox right now and go to the horror section, every movie in there, every single one for the most part, if it isn't like a bigger budget film, is some copy of either The Conjuring or Paranormal Activity, or it's a zombie movie, or it's a shitty, really unoriginal slasher movie. Nobody is doing anything that's like remotely interesting. That's why when even if they're not like Satanic Panic in these movies that come out that aren't even that great, but because in this day and age they're trying to do something with a horror movie, something that's either original or fun or has some sort of original take on it, we go, oh, let me see that, because everything else on the fucking shelves is so bad. So at least that's my opinion. Like I said, I know I'm an older man that is very much stuck in the past in lots of ways, but I genuinely love and get excited by new stuff and new films and new filmmakers. And I remember seeing House of the Devil and being like, this is my guy. Ty West is my guy. He gets it. And then subsequently every other movie he's made after that, I haven't cared for nearly as much. But I'm waiting for it. I want there to be those new dudes, those new filmmakers, the new films, but just don't see it as often, unfortunately.
I think the key takeaway is, there's a lot of great movies out there that don't get theatrical releases, but unfortunately in this day and age, like more current than anything, you kind of have to wade through the garbage to kind of find the treasures. But it doesn't mean because it's I think the kind of the moral story is just because it's direct to video on demand doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means that somebody may just have made a smart move to distribute it differently and to get it to a wider audience, which makes sense, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I didn't even think about it until you just said that. But in the 80s, there was theatrical release and direct to video, but we live in a much more complicated time because there's multiple layers, because you have like the streaming service originals, and maybe they're not so great that they would get released. They would really make their money back in a theatrical setting with the cost of all of that, but they're still good films, the Netflix originals, the Hulu originals, and there's going to be those great movies. Then you have that next layer under that, which are the movies that were independently made that, had some heart, but maybe weren't that great, but maybe had a star in it or something, or were made by somebody who made a good movie once in a while. Those sort of like mid-level Beyond Fest films. And maybe you'll see those pop up on a streaming service. And then you have the bottom of the barrel, which is the ones that nobody ever rents from the red boxes, and the ones that are like when you go to Fandango on your Roku and go to films to rent, they're the ones that you're like, oh, how is that even a movie? So there's even different levels with like online, with the advent of streaming. We now have so many avenues to watch movies now that we're actually really spoiled, but it's also given more and more avenues for lesser and lesser quality films to sort of compete with big budget movies. So yeah,
very, very true. Very, very wonderful statement to end on tonight.
Definitely. Very passionate as always, Jimothy. We greatly appreciate it.
Sorry, guys.
No, you're good, man.
This has been the Jimothy Hour.
No, man, I love your passion, and I agree with you, and I think that's why, because of that, like you find yourself as you go through the copious amounts of streaming services and content that are out there, like you circle back to what you like, because a lot of times that's the comfort, like I don't know how many times I put on a movie and I've seen it a million times, and there's a million other movies I haven't seen, but it's like, this is the one that I trust. Like,
right.
You stick with the devil, that type of situation.
Absolutely. Well, let's really quick name a movie, both of y'all, that you would recommend to our viewers that was direct to video that they should watch.
Derek, I'll let you.
I would say if I'm pulling from the 80s, kind of that video market, I'm going to go with, I think we had mentioned it before, but I'm going to say it again. hey, check out Castle Freak. I think that's a great movie.
Good deal.
That's a great choice.
To go check out. If I had to pick something from like modern, something that's maybe like directly to the like streaming services now, it's a little bit harder to pick. But I would say, you know what, one we've talked about that I've actually grown to appreciate. I've watched it a few times. Is Haunt.
There you go.
So that's one that came directly, never had theatrical release, came directly to video, and I think it's a pretty, having watched it a few times, it's a pretty well done movie. It's grown on me.
Awesome.
So that's one to check out. That is a diamond in the rough.
Good deal. And what about you, Jimothy?
Well, I won't say any modern because I couldn't probably name one immediately, but I will say I'll give you two. I will say Hack-O-Lantern is a movie that doesn't get nearly enough love. Not it's not a masterpiece, but it's definitely a fun watch in the 80s direct to video. And then one of my favorite movies ever, Maniac Cop 2, I think is the quintessential, the small budget, but they made the most of that fucking budget. I think Maniac Cop 1 is great, but Maniac Cop 2 is even better.
That's when Maniac Cop starts getting interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you like horror movies, and if you like this podcast, Maniac Cop 2 is one of those movies I would recommend to anybody.
Good recommendation, buddy.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, guys. And it was another great episode, if I do say so myself. Well, I'm going to say that every episode. So they're all great in my heart. But, of course, if you thought it was great, feel free to follow us on Spotify. There we go. I can't speak. And then make sure to go subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. And, follow us on social media at TankRodPod. That's on Twitter and Instagram. That's at TankRodPod. And you can use the hashtag TP Massacre or hashtag TankRodPod. Let us know what you think. Did we miss anything? Did the guys, leave anything off, this episode that you would like to talk about?
If you any young bloods out there that are, kind of listening, that are born in the digital age, let us know your thoughts, man. I would love to get what the young kids are doing nowadays.
Jimothy would love to get with the young kids.
Hey now, hey-o.
Hey, that bait.
I'm
that
kidding,
bait he was talking
folks.
about.
I am.
Just call me daddy.
No, we gotta go. Thank you so much for listening to the Texas Podcast Massacre. We're out. Bye.